pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, today I am continuing the sermon series I started last week called Countdown to the Commandments. And each week we're going to look at one of the commandments that we find in Exodus 20 and also in Deuteronomy 5. If you remember, a few months after Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, they arrived in the Sinai desert. And at one point, God called Moses to come up to the top of Mount Sinai, and he gave him these commandments, along with some other rules and laws that the Israelites were expected to follow. God wrote them on stone tablets, and Moses then carried them down to the people. Now, Moses was up there quite a long time, like 40 days, I think, and the people figured that something had happened to him and he wasn't coming back. So instead of waiting for him, they went ahead, gathered up all their gold, and they put it together and they built a golden calf, which they then proceeded to worship. Well, when Moses came down, he saw what they did, and he got so angry that he took those stone tablets and he threw them down, and they smashed into pieces. Well, God was very gracious to Moses. He called him to come back up to the top of Mount Sinai, and he gave him another set of the commandments written on stone tablets. So those tablets eventually ended up in the Ark of the Covenant, that box that was carried with the Israelites wherever they traveled on their way to the Promised Land. Now, each week during this series, I'm going to be looking at one of the commandments, but instead of starting at number 1 and working my way down, starting at number 10 and working my way up. Last week I talked about the 10th commandment, which was do not covet. And today I want to look at the 9th commandment, which is do not lie. Now, if you were here last week, you remember that I started off talking about Dave Letterman's top 10 list. If you remember from the Late Night with David Letterman, he used to do these top 10 lists. They really were funny. I thought they made no sense, but they were hysterical. So I shared a couple of those with you last week. Believe it or not, this week, I found a top 10 list that relates perfectly to this week's commandments. It's called the Top 10 American Lies, and believe it or not, it was written by Rick Warren. You may be familiar with who he is. He wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, The Purpose-Driven Church. He's pastor at Saddleback Church in Simi Valley in California. So anyway, here's his top 10 list of the most common lies told in America, and he starts, as usual, with number 10. And the number 10 one is, your table will be ready in a minute. This is one of my favorite, one size fits all, right? This will hurt me more than it hurts you. Number 7, I'm sorry I'm late, I was stuck in traffic. Number 6, the check is in the mail. Number 5, this offer is limited to the first 50 callers. How many times do we see that? You could be number 700 and you'd still get it, right? Number 4, it's not the money, it's the principle of the thing. It's the money. Number 3, I just need 5 minutes of your time. Number 2, I'll start my diet tomorrow, right? Number 1, I'm from the IRS and I'm here to help you. We can all relate to at least some of those, right? And I think I would add, my dog ate my homework. You've heard that a lot. So let's talk about lying. Let's talk about why we shouldn't do it, why God does not want us to lie. First of all, the word lie is a noun, and it means an intentionally false statement. In other words, when a person lies, he or she deliberately makes a false statement, even though he or she knows it's not true. Have you ever done that? I know I have. I imagine most of you have too. And it appears from research that most people lie fairly often. There's a book called The Day America Told the Truth. It's by the author James Patterson. Some of you may have read his books. He worked with Peter Kim on this. And they interviewed numerous people about various topics, including lying, to see exactly where people stand today on various issues. And their research showed that 91% of those surveyed lie routinely about matters they consider trivial. Little white lies. 36% lie about important matters. 36%, that's pretty big. 86% regularly lie lie to their parents, 75% lie to friends, 73% lie to siblings, and 69% lie to their spouses. Think about that. That's a lot of lying. But not only do we hear in the Ten Commandments that we're not to lie, there are numerous other references in the Bible that say the same thing. One comes from Proverbs 12:22, where we hear this: "The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy." And in Proverbs 25:1, we're told, "Telling lies about others is as harmful as hitting them with an axe, wounding them with a sword, and shooting them with a sharp arrow." Now, there are numerous other passages that make it very clear God does not want us to lie, not only to our friends and our family, not only about the big things, but about anything and everything that we do. So God says, do not lie, and he means do not lie, period. But you know what? People have lied since the very beginning of time. Just listen to some of these lies we find in the Bible. Remember the serpent from Genesis 3, right in the beginning of the Bible? We're told in Genesis 3, verses 1 through 5, this is from the Message, "The serpent was clever, more clever than any wild animal God had made. He spoke to the woman, 'Do I understand that God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden?' And the woman said to the serpent, 'Not at all. We can eat from trees in the garden. It's only about the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, do not eat from it. Do not touch it, or you will die.' And the serpent told the woman, 'You won't die. God knows that the moment you eat from that tree, you'll see what's really going on. You'll be just like God, knowing everything, ranging all the way from good to evil.'" Right there, that's the very first lie that was ever told. And look at all the problems it caused. Not only Adam and Eve, but that lie is still causing us problems today, right? Then remember in Genesis 4, where we hear that Cain killed his brother Abel. And God went to Cain and he said, "Hey, where is Abel?" You remember what Cain said? He said he didn't know where his brother was because he wasn't his brother's keeper. Another lie. Genesis 37, you're familiar with this story. We hear that Joseph's brothers told their father a big lie after they sold him off to some traveling merchants. Remember, they took Joseph's beautiful coat, they smeared it with animal blood, they took it back to their father, and they said Joseph had died at the hands of a wild animal. Another lie. And then another really huge lie that always comes to my mind is when Peter, as recorded in Matthew 26, was asked if he knew Jesus, if he was the man hanging out with Jesus. Do you remember what Peter said? Peter lied not just once, not twice, but 3 times when he said, "Oh, I don't even know that man." 3 times Peter lied. But clearly God doesn't want us to lie. So why do we? What is it that causes us to lie, even when, or especially when, we know God doesn't want us to do it? I think there are a number of reasons, to be honest. I think for some people it's natural for them to lie. For some, they see it lying as necessary to their survival. They feel they can't get by in life unless they lie every now and then. And if you don't believe me, listen to this poll. There was a group of 25,000 high school students said that they agreed with the statement, half of them agreed with the statement, a person has to lie or cheat sometimes in order to succeed. 50%, 25,000 kids, 50% of those agreed that it's necessary in order to succeed, it's necessary to lie. So we begin thinking lying is just part of our life, right? We don't even think about it. It's part of our nature to lie. And we need to make things up when we have to. And it's okay to do that. There's another reason I think that we lie, and that's to protect ourselves. I think there's a lot of dimensions, I think, for this one. But sometimes we lie in order to get ourselves in trouble. "Gee, I'm sorry, officer, I didn't see that speed limit sign." I've used that one before. "I'm sorry, teacher, the dog ate my homework." "I'm sorry I got home late, Mom. My cell phone died. I had no idea what time it was." We work hard to protect ourselves from getting into trouble, so we lie. And we've probably all done that at some point or another. And we also lie to protect ourselves in other ways. Has this ever happened to any of you? Your friend comes up and she says, "Hey, do you like my new dress?" And you think, "Ooh, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen." But do you say that? No, you lie and say, "Oh, it looks really nice on you." Now, that's a lie, even though we're trying to be nice, right? Someone asks you, "Hey, how do you like my meatloaf?" And even though you think it tastes like sawdust, you lie and say, "Oh, gee, it's really good." Right? We've done those. We do that from time to time. We all lie sometimes in order not to hurt someone else's feelings. And we justify lying so that we're not hurting someone else. The reality, though, tells us that what's really taking place here is that we're protecting ourselves. We're making so we're not put into an uncomfortable position because we're telling the truth to someone. And because we know if we say the truth, we're going to hurt someone's feelings. So what better way to do it than to avoid confrontation than to lie? What better way to do that than by try lying to get ourselves off the hook? It just seems easier on ourselves if we lie about it rather than admitting how we really feel. And so we lie to protect ourselves. We also lie when it benefits us, like when there's something to be gained by telling a lie. You think about people who cheat on their taxes. Think about people who work under the table for cash rather than report their income to the IRS and where they have to pay taxes. Think about people who exaggerate their wealth. Think about those who go fishing and say, "Oh, I caught one this big, but they got away." Yeah, it's probably bad. Right? They're all lies. Now, most of us don't tell big lies that cause big problems, right? We tell these little white lies that seemingly are unimportant. But you know what? While those little white lies may seem unimportant, you need to know that there are consequences to every single lie that we tell, no matter how big or how small. And one of those consequences is referred to as the snowball effect. A lot of times when you tell one lie, you end up having to tell more lies in order to keep that previous lie from being exposed. And on it goes, until you're so messed up because you can't keep your lies straight. You ever watch Judge Judy on TV? I love her. She always says, if you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory. You don't have to remember what you lied about. You know the truth. That's because one lie leads to another and another and another, and pretty soon you can't remember what the truth was. Lying also adds more to the problem than the truth would. You think about lying to cover up something that you've done. Something bad perhaps. And when the truth is discovered, it's even worse because you had to try to lie to cover it up. And now you have more problems than just the one you started with, especially if you've lied to the police or if you've lied in a courtroom. Those lies catch up to us, don't they? Someone said, tell the truth, and it becomes part of your past. Tell a lie, and it becomes part of your future. Think about that. Our lies catch up to us. There was a funny story I heard the other day about 4 friends who skipped school, and they went for a drive. They just took a drive, no big deal. Well, they got to school late, and they told the teacher that they'd had a flat tire on the way, and that's why they were late to school. And the teacher said, no problem. The girls were really relieved. Oh, good, we got away with it. But the teacher said, since you missed the exam this morning, I'll give it to you right now. All 4 of you take a different chair in the corner of the room, don't talk to each other, and all of you write down the answer to this question. Which tire was it? Got caught, didn't they? They got caught. Now another consequence of lying is that we're not the only ones affected by it. Others are affected too. We may not think they are, but they are. Think about it. If I steal money from you, I can pay you back. Our relationship may be wrecked, but you'll be whole again, right? If I steal $20 and give it back to you eventually, you may not ever like me again, but you got your money back. But if I lie about you, whether it's giving false testimony or gossiping or slander, I can't take that back. and it may be permanent damage has been done. You know, we hear stories from time to time about how people are wrongly accused of committing a crime. And sometimes it's things like rape, or sometimes it's like murder. You know, I saw him murder someone, or he told me he did. Because of those circumstantial evidence, sometimes people are convicted and sent to prison. Now, even though the person lying may ultimately admit to what they've done, which allows the other person then to go free, think of the damage that has been caused by in the life of the person who is wrongly accused. Think of the damage caused to his or her family and those relationships. There's no way to repair that damage. And even though the person was innocent from the very beginning, he or she will live with the stigma of that conviction for the rest of his or her life. And so we have to remember that even though it doesn't appear that way, other people are always affected by the lies we tell, whether we even know it or not. So how do we deal with lying? How do we stop telling those little white lies that seem so innocent, so unimportant? Well, first we need to remember that no matter how big or how small the lie is, we're not just lying to ourselves, and we're not lying just to other people. We're lying to God, and there are consequences to that. Think about the story we hear in Acts 5 about Ananias and Sapphira, who lied about the price they received for selling a piece of property. They undercut the price when they reported the sale. And God dealt with them harshly by causing them both to fall down and die. So when we lie about something, we need to understand we're pushing God out of our hearts. We're allowing evil to enter. The Apostle Peter said that Satan is the father of all lies. And God said when God said we're not to lie, he meant we're not to even lie about the little things. We're not supposed to tell even those little white lies. God wants us to take lying seriously. He's willing to show how serious he is about it. Now, the next thing we need to do to protect ourselves from lying is to realize what a bad thing it is and to practice being honest. You know, I think most of us would say that we're pretty honest people, but we have to believe and we have to act according to honesty. According to honesty really being the best policy, even if it means losing something. You know, we might think, well, if I'm honest here, I might lose this relationship or a job or whatever. But folks, in reality, when we tell the truth, we gain so much more than we ever lose, including having a good and clear conscience. I heard a good story about a high school golfer named Chelsea Richard, who went to school in Brandon, Florida. She lost her chance to win the 2004 state championship by being honest. And what happened was that she was a qualifier for the state finals. And on the second shot, she hit the ball into the rough. And without knowing it, she played another player's golf ball out of the rough, and then she finished the hole. Now, when she started the third hole, she realized what she'd done. And the rule was that a golfer must declare the wrong ball penalty before putting on the hole where the infraction occurred, or she would be disqualified. Now, Chelsea was the only one who knew the mistake she'd made. No one else had seen it. And she, you know, naturally, if she'd lied, no one would be wiser, right? Chelsea was honest. And she reported the error, and which resulted in a painful ending to her senior season and her dream of going to state. But here's what she later said. With my faith and with God, being honest was the most important thing to me. And that's what's going to advance on throughout my life. Being honest and making the right choices. So she set this example, this wonderful example for us, by owning up to her mistake, even though it meant she lost out on her dream to advance to the state finals. Well, finally, I think we need to stay continually in prayer, especially when we're faced with those times when lying seems to be the better alternative. Pray that God will give you the courage to tell the truth, whether the lie you're about to tell is one of those seemingly innocuous white lies, or whether it's a big one that might change someone's life forever. It takes courage, it takes strength sometimes to tell the truth, especially when it seems easier to lie. But that's not what God wants for us. God didn't say don't tell big lies, but little ones are okay. God said do not lie. And as hard as that may be, we need to listen. We need to obey that commandment. And next week we're going to look at the 8th commandment, which is no stealing. I imagine that's going to be an interesting one as well. So let me close with a prayer today. Hey God, I thank you so much for your words. Sometimes those little white lies seem to pop out and we don't even think about it. But God, I thank you for letting us know that those are wrong as well. I pray that we can do better and that we can honor you more. We love you, Jesus. It's